Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Wally Main. I'm a professional civil engineer at CESA. I occupy the position of Contractual Affairs Manager. And before I start, would just like to apologize for the short delay in commencing with the webinar. Sorry about that. So on behalf of the CESA President and the Chairpersons of the CESA Free State and Northern Cape branches, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to you, being our speakers, our guests, and our members, and to thank you for joining us today for the CESA Presidential Webinar as presented to the Free State and Northern Cape branches. The theme of the webinar is the CESA Presidential Message for 2021, which is entitled Rebuilding with Purpose and the Importance of Quality, Integrity, and Accountability in South Africa's Road to Recovery. But before we get started, I would like to quickly outline some of the House rules for our delegates. On the taskbar at the bottom of the screen, you will see the chat and the question and answer icons. Please use the chat for any comments you may have, and the Q&A or question and answer for your questions, which will be addressed in the Q&A session at the end of the webinar. I would like to encourage you to submit any questions you would like to ask, and also importantly, to kindly indicate which of the speakers you would like to answer your question. So in the interests of saving time, and as you will have seen the program, I will briefly introduce the speakers and their topics only when it is their turn to address us. In addition, it would be appreciated, this is to the speakers, if they would, where possible, highlight in their presentations possible solutions to the infrastructure development problems facing the Free State and the Northern Cape provinces. Without further ado, I would like to introduce our first speaker, Mr. Irishador Oliphant, Vice Chairperson of the CESA Northern Cape branch, and ask him to switch on his video and unmute his audio. Mr. Oliphant is a mechanical engineering technologist with CESA member firm Dihlase Consulting Engineers, and he will be speaking on the topic of best practice procurement with regard to engineering services. So at this point, I'd like to call on Mr. Oliphant to take the floor. Mr. Oliphant, it's over to you. And just to remind you that you have 5 minutes for your talk. Thank you.
Understood. Thank you, Mr. Walimain. Good day, everybody. Mr. Chairman, the President of Consulting Engineers in South Africa, fellow CESA members, distinguished participants, and ladies and gentlemen. My paper for this conference is on best practice procurement of engineering services. Distinguished participants, the significant contributions the procurement function makes to organizations and national economies makes it imperative to put in place formal administrative and legal frameworks to ensure that the due process is followed in the execution and implementation of procurement policies. I took an extract from a thesis, and it reads as follows. Prior to the 1994, the government procurement system in South Africa favored large and established businesses only, and it was very difficult for newly established business to enter the procurement system. In 1994, however, government procurement was granted constitutional status, and it was recognized as a means of addressing past discriminatory policies and practices. It is argued that the use of procurement as a policy tool in South Africa is justified. On the whole, the primary legislation dealing with the use of procurement as a policy tool offers an adequate effect to the constitutionally prescribed use of procurement as a policy tool. Now, the size and volume of government procurement contracts facilitates the government's decision with regarding when and whom it contracts with. And these decisions, after a number of issues, aside from government procurement being business, the acquisition of goods and services on the best possible terms, it is also broader social, economic, and political implications. Now, the freedom of governments to use procurement as a policy tool, however, to a large extent, has been restrained in recent years due to implementation of measures aimed at achieving free trade in public markets. These measures mostly notably include the World Trade Organization Government Procurement Agreement and the trade restrictions in place under European Community law. This does not detract from the fact that procurement has often been, at times still, and is used by government as a tool to implement secondary policies. A study undertaken from the European Community in 1995 indicates that procurement has been used by governments to stimulate economic activity, protect national industry against foreign competition, improve the competitiveness of certain industrial sectors, and remedy regional disparities. It has also been employed to achieve certain more direct social policy objectives, such as to foster the creation of jobs, promote fair labor conditions, promote the use of local labor as a means to prevent discrimination against minority groups, protect the environment, encourage equality of opportunity between men and women, and promote the increased utilization of the disabled in employment. Now, I've taken some problems that we in the engineering fraternity are facing. And we know that the cost of purchasing and doing business is on a steady rise. Businesses have started to regard procurement management as a top priority since it takes up a large share of their overall spend. Considering most organizations still hold on to their manual procurement practices, a whole complete revamp of their procurement functions is crucial to keep pace with business demands. The problems experienced are mainly the current procurement processes. I just did some bullets. I will share the presentation with you afterwards, and it reads as follows. Number one, treats infrastructure as an off-the-shelf commodity. Non-construction procurement, whereas infrastructure projects are unique and require individual planning, design, construction. Number two, places an emphasis on price and de-emphasize on quality functionality, which is inappropriate for sector as a reduced quality functionality to minimum levels. Number three, encourage discounting through open competitive tendering, which inevitably leads to massive fiscal losses and weak developmental outcomes. Number four, experiences the following regulated problems. A procurement practice are inappropriate for the construction sector with the emphasis on price and a de-emphasis on quality functionality, non-recognition, access to work opportunities for small to medium and emerging firms. Services rendered by built environment professionals are not designated as local in terms of the PPFA, which is problematic for skills development and empowering in South Africa. The existing requirement for consolidated joint BBBE scorecards at the tender stage is onerous, costly, and discourages the formation of joint ventures for infrastructure projects. Public sector clients and service providers suffer when infrastructure projects exceed more than 3 years due to onerous regulatory requirements requiring public participation, resulting in non-payment of service providers and delays in project completion. Number five, experiences the following institutional problems. The government frequently lacks technical capacity to plan and manage construction projects, including procurement, planning, and design. Like we could see in the procurement of the Cuban engineers. And I just want to commend Mr. Campbell for standing up for the consulting engineer for fraternity. Procurement irregularities abound in the construction sector, which is compounded by lack of enforcement and appropriately trained procurement staff. The delayed infrastructure investment by government, also known as the blocked infrastructure project pipeline, prevents proper planning and allocation of resources and may ultimately result in a national exodus of engineering skills. Poor schooling in maths and science contributes to lack of capacity and understanding with respect to procurement of infrastructure service providers. Here's an outline of 5 procurement best practices that, when implemented properly, can significantly lower costs, improve process efficiency, and have a positive impact on the cost-income ratio. I've known that most of these small businesses are struggling with a lot of tools and resources, but especially in the Northern Cape, there are so many organizations. Especially, we are known as a mining province, and I think most of these small businesses and medium enterprises, they don't go to the full extent to get to get them the support that they need. And these are some of the ways that they can actually go on, and make their businesses profitable. Number one, cloud-based procurement tools. Taking procurement digital is a critical step in making procurement activities future-ready. Digital procurement solutions help teams reduce the repetitive organizational and operational parts of procurement, freeing up team members to focus on strategic roles. Number 2, spend transparency. Making procurement functions transparent is the baseline to unlock potential savings and make headway into achieving operational excellence. Spend transparency is the key to ensuring accountability and minimizing opportunities for fraud in the procurement process. The steps to ensure spend transparency is the procurement process. Define and implement procurement policies properly. Monitor and document every step of the procurement process. Identify and manage a list of approved suppliers. Establish foolproof procurement contracts and conduct frequent audits. Number 3, supplier engagement. Every organization has a number of suppliers who deliver essential products, provide specialty services, perform regular maintenance, and complete one-time urgent repairs. Although calling a specific vendor to order merchandise or repair a faulty machine sounds simple, the task qualifying and managing a supplier is anything but. Number 4, optimize inventory. As profit margins shrinks in certain industries, organizations are constantly looking for ways to control their spend and improve the bottom line. Their primary focus is the procurement process, so procurement teams need to constantly review their inventory and strive to ensure they stay optimal. Contract management. Although procurement teams try to negotiate potential savings in sourcing stage, they never completely unlock the value. While the reasons vary, the most common problem is disorganized contract management processes. A recent report on contract management indicates that nearly 81% of organizations don't use any contract lifecycle management software. As a result, they face a number of pain points, including lack of consistency across contracts, that's 53%, cumbersome processing, 45%, and supply chain continuity problems, 33%. Organizations can stay clear in these procurement pitfalls by moving their contract management process to the cloud. When contracts are created, stored, and maintained in a centralized data repository, organizations can leverage their spend optimally, reduce costs, and mitigate the risk. Contract management automation will improve organizations with central repository, configurable interface, automated notifications, and performance monitoring. In order to get the fundamentals right, organizations need to implement an effective procurement to procure to pay process and embrace the right technology solutions. However, simply revamping the process and implementing a top technology product won't make the procurement function best in class. The right people do. Hence, this is our slogan in our company. Systems makes it possible and people make it happen. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, that will be my presentation. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Olifant. Thank you very much for so ably addressing us on this topic, which I'm sure everyone will agree is so important to the sustainability of our member firms. And thank you for giving us valuable advice in this regard. Our second speaker is Ms. Pearl Mabidja, the chairperson of the CESA YPF in the Northern Cape. And at this point, I would just like to request Ms. Mabidja to switch on her video and unmute her audio. Ms. Mabidja is a civil engineer specializing in roads and stormwater projects and is also an executive director at Achanang Consulting Engineers. Ms. Mabidja is passionate about the upliftment of young professionals and is always willing to go the extra mile to share her experience with others. Ms. Mabidja will be talking to us on the topic of the engineering skills pipeline in terms of capacity. So I'd like to hand over to Ms. Mabidja Pearl at this point. So over to you. And just to remind you that you have 5 minutes, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the introduction. My presentation will be as brief as it can be. Honorable CESA President, respected CEO, Mr. Chris Campbell, and our esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed a privilege to be part of this presidential webinar. My topic for today is engineering skills pipeline capacity. I will briefly just do some introduction regarding engineering skills capacity. Engineering skills capacity was announced many years ago that government plans to spend millions on education and skills development, and that priority would be given to ensuring that 30,000 more engineers were integrated into the engineering economy by 2014. Since then, there has been an urge in initiative to draw school learners into the profession, largely coordinated by most engineering organizations. The initiative coordinates and supports public and private sectors' efforts in its network and in the industry. It also distributes information to promote engineering as a career choice to primary and high school learners. With such collaboration, it has enabled us to make a bigger difference in the engineering skills pipeline. In my presentation today, I'll be briefly talking about professional registration, mentoring, relevant experience, your professional benefits, and training program. Accredited program. You have to meet industry standards which are recognized on the National Qualification Framework, which is your NQF. These qualifications will equip you with a higher education, and it should be recognized by any institution. You will then study any engineering qualification and graduate in that profession. After that, you get a job, you start training and accumulating experience within the company. Once you have your qualification, you will then have to register as a candidate professional for that then you start training and getting experience. When you are ready and you feel like you have accumulated so much experience that you need over the years, then you can register as a professional of any engineering professional. These are just this is just to show you how it goes. As a candidate, you can register as an engineer technologist, or a certified engineer, or an engineer technician. Once you have registered as a candidate, you then register as a professional on the following fields, which is you can become a professional engineer, engineer technologist, certified engineer, or a professional technician. And then we also have our specified categories, which are your lifting inspection, your lifting machinery, your medical equipment, and your protection system inspectors. Why register as a professional? Because of the professional status, that is marketability and financial gain, trust and recognition by peers in the profession, and lastly, your work reservation. Planning, training, and program. There are two principles that must be followed by the supervisor, mentors when planning and training programs for candidates. First is your work experience. A variety of work activities is necessary for proper development of a candidate. Variety may be obtained at various stages in the life cycle of an engineer activities, which are your conception, your planning, your training, your construction, implementation, operation, and your closure. And secondly, second one is your responsibility and your accountability, which is increasing responsibility and accountability within the organization must be imposed on and expected by the candidate until he or she is capable of accepting professional responsibilities in making and executing engineering decisions at a full capacity level. I thank you.
Thank you, Pearl, Ms. Mabidja, for a brief. Timekeeping is obviously a characteristic there. For your brief but very interesting presentation and outlining the route for young professionals to follow in registering in our profession. It's noteworthy that we have vibrant young people like yourselves that will add to our skills pipeline in future. So thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Thank you, ma'am. Our next speaker is Mr. Pakiso Leboni, the Chief Director of Sustainable Resource Management in the Treasury Department in the Free State. At this point, I'd like to ask Mr. Leboni to switch on his video and unmute his audio. Mr. Leboni is the author of various instruction notes within the Free State province, mainly focusing on the fiscal framework in the province during our constrained economy. Mr. Pakiso Leboni is in his final year of reading for a master's degree in public management and administration at the University of the Free State. He will be speaking on the topic of promoting effective and efficient infrastructure delivery. And at this point, I'd like to invite Mr. Leboni to address us. So it's over to you, Mr. Leboni. And just to remind you that you have 10 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Program Director. Really, really much appreciated. I feel very much honored to be part of this meeting. It is really, really encouraging. I would, without really wasting time, I would really like to say in our language here in government, all protocol observed. Now, Program Director, I will quickly load my presentation. Sorry, I'm trying to quickly upload my presentation. I'm not sure if you are able to see the presentation, Chairperson or Program Director.
We're not, Mr. Laboni, not yet.
Let me just try it again.
I'm not sure exactly, but can we project it from our side? Would that be helpful?
I was supposed to send it through. Okay, let me just check if you are able to see it. You should be able to see it now.
Yes, if you'll just put it in the slide view. We are seeing it. Just put it in slide view.
No, thank you very much.
Perfect.
Thank you very, very much, Program Director. The presentation that I will be delivering will be talking about promoting effective and efficient infrastructure delivery. This is my presentation layout. I'll look at a purpose, introduction, and then we'll also look at some of the proposed allocations as well as the background information on our provincial economy. Program Director, the purpose, as I've indicated, is just to abreast the meeting about the imperative of promoting effective and efficient infrastructure delivery. Now, I'm looking at both a private as well as a public sector. Just a quick background information. I must indicate to the meeting that it has been a government intention to ensure that there is efficient and effective infrastructure delivery. And this was commissioned by National Treasury way back in 2000 when they were conducting a review on provincial service delivery system in 2001. Now this system was purely around the following. The first one was that they must have a framework that they should develop to guide and structure management of infrastructure delivery. The other one was that they must be able to support provincial department to develop their capacity to manage infrastructure. So as we all know, once you have that capacity as well as a structured framework, you would be able to deliver on a good infrastructure. Program Director, I must also indicate that today we know that the above findings should also be explored and applied to both local as well as the public sector. Now, apart from these findings, the following issues were also identified as a key, effective and efficient for infrastructure delivery. The first one was that we need to have an enabling environment. This basically would allow us to address some of the challenges that we may have. Now, the other one is that we need to create and maintain awareness through initial information sharing, ongoing training, and monitoring and evaluation reporting. So we all know that once we share information, once we are continuously being retrained, and whatever performance that we have if we are continuously monitoring and evaluating that performance. That would have a clear goal for us. Now, the other one is that we must have short, medium, and long-term goals, as well as the objectives. We must also adopt and implement specific infrastructure management and best practice methodologies. We must also grade the required technical built environment knowledge and experience capacity. I think one of the speakers spoke about the supply chain. The supply chain is very, very key when we are talking about the infrastructure, because this is the system that we use to procure for the very same infrastructure. Now, just to quickly bring everything forward around some of the reforms and the tools that the government is currently having. Chair, I must indicate that the infrastructure environment is evolving, and to this effect, the government has also established a fully fledged system that will look at immovable asset management. Now, this system is called Infrastructure Delivery Management System, which is IDMS. The IDMS, it has been there since 2018, and it consists of the following. One, it's called legislative requirements. Now, under that, we know that there are also, it has 3 issues, which is planning. Obviously, we need to ensure that we plan correctly when it comes to the infrastructure, because if we don't plan correctly, we'll have problems going forward. Number 2, it's budgeting. The other one is supply chain as well as asset management. Now, moving forward, infrastructure delivery management is also embedded as part of the IDMS. Now, this component has about 4 hierarchy delivery management process, which then has program management, operation and maintenance management, as well as project management. Then the last one is infrastructure delivery enabler elements. These comprise of 2 distinct interconnecting system of performance and risk management. So this is the current system that has been used by the government. I must also indicate that this system recently, it is going to be devolved to our local municipalities, especially looking at the metros. So that's one element that the government continues to pride itself with. And this system, it has been enhanced every now and then. Every year there are updates given the reforms within the government. Now, one other issue that is also key, which I must also indicate, is that delivering infrastructure that is fit for intended purpose as per user requirements in all respects, especially within the planned or required timeline at a market-related cost, constructed from material and with electrical and mechanical installation that will optimize the operational and maintenance cost over the life cycle of the infrastructure. What I'm trying to say here is that from our side, we have noted that there has been a number of challenges. One is that most of the projects were overrun, meaning there were a lot of variation orders. Others were not completed on time. So others were completed on time, but with high cost other than the original ones which were budgeted for. So these are some of the challenges that we need to continue to address going forward. Now, Chair, given the time that have been allocated, I just thought I must briefly highlight some of the challenges that we may have whilst trying to ensure that we promote efficient and effective infrastructure. One of the challenges around capacitation. You may have a good plan, but you find that you don't have capable human resource or you are understaffed. Now, I must indicate that it has been a view from National Treasury that certain departments must be capacitated. Those departments in the main are Department of Health, Department of Education, as well as Department of Public Works, as well as Provincial Treasury. There has been funding set aside precisely on the capacitation such that we continue to hire the engineers, the QS in the main. Now, the other challenge that we may have is infrastructure procurement. When it comes to infrastructure procurement, we know it is not always easy, like when you procure any other goods and services or when you hire people. So this is one area that most of the department do not master. And in the main, it also resulted in an unauthorized expenditure come end of the year. But equally so, there has been some reforms that the government has proposed. And equally so, the department were also requested to ensure that whenever they procure, they need to ensure that they align procurement with the relevant regulations, such as the Treasury Regulation 16A, 6.3A, subsection 2. Then the other issue is around reporting. Obviously, when you procure for infrastructure, or when you spend on the very same infrastructure, you should be able to report an account such that we see that whether you are procuring in line with, or you are spending in line with the plans or not, and whether there are challenges with regard to the spending such that we can intervene as early as possible. So in this regard, the National Treasury has also introduced a tool called Infrastructure Reporting Model. This is the model wherein all projects by each and every department is recorded, the spending is being accounted for, and if there are challenges around the expenditure, in this tool, department would then be requested to provide reasons as to why the expenditure is not according to the plan. Now, embedded in the very same IRM, there's also a functionality that is used to capture the departmental approved infrastructure plans as well as the budget. Now, this it's linked to the estimate of provincial revenue and expenditure. The other challenge which I've slightly spoken to is that some of the projects are not completed on time as well as on budget. This is one area wherein from our side as Provincial Treasury, we also have quarterly review meetings with the departments just to outline or understand the rationale behind the delay when it comes to the implementation of the projects. And then lastly, the end of the year reporting, whilst everything has been spent, departments are also held accountable, wherein they are supposed to report on their yearly expenditure. So obviously, this is a very extensive work or report wherein we need to really understand what are the challenges and what are the risks and how are we going to address these challenges going forward, such that we avoid these challenges that we are continuously having. Now, I also thought that it is important to also outline that there has been some pronouncement by the President of South Africa, wherein he also indicated that South Africa's current economy is not doing well. Our economy continues to decline. We have challenges around unemployment. We also have challenges around inequality. Now, all these were also exacerbated by COVID-19 pandemic, wherein we have noted number of unemployment. We have also noted the current fiscal consolidation by government. We have also noted the pressures also from a business side. Now, one of the levers which was identified as key was that as a government, we need to ensure that we need to sustain our economy, we need to create jobs. And one of the things that can, or which was regarded as an enabler, it was an infrastructure. So I just thought that it is important that we bear that in mind as and when we deal with our infrastructure. Now, just a quick synopsis of the Free State infrastructure. We have a budget of 4.4 billion in the current financial year. Now, this budget has been disaggregated as follows. We are putting about 60%. This 60% is just around our existing infrastructure. We are also putting 8.9% on the new infrastructure. I think I need to re-emphasize on the issue around existing infrastructure. We know for a fact that if we don't maintain or rehabilitate our existing infrastructure, we will continue to incur a lot of cost around the implementation of the new infrastructure. So it is key that we set aside most of our funding towards existing infrastructure. Then we also have the infrastructure transfers to the tune of $1 billion. So we also have non-infrastructure, which is some of the issues that I've alluded to say, as part of capacity, we need to ensure that there are systems in place. We also have appropriate human resources. So this is also embedded within the infrastructure. Now, moving forward, I need to go to the closure, Chair. I'm looking at a time. I also thought that given the fact that we are with the engineering, we need to also, I need to also challenge you just to look at the contribution that you are making to our economy. We have primary industries wherein we have agriculture. I'll just focus on 1 year, let's say 2021. If you look at the contribution of agriculture is 2.7, the mining 7.5%. Now we move to our secondary industries. Manufacturing 12.8%, water and electricity 3.8%. Now construction, we are contributing, or construction is contributing 3.8%. And as you can see, it is declining over the MTF. So this is a challenge that I'm actually putting forward to say, in this forum, obviously there's something that we ought to do in order to contribute towards our provincial economy, because we are only contributing 3.8 and it is declining if you look at the projections. I think this is just the shares. I'll also look at construction. Can see that construction is declining 0.8, and then it will then rebound in 2022, 1.6, 2.6, and then also go down into in 2024 by 2.4%. Chair, I would really like to share a lot of information. However, given the time that I've been allocated, I just thought that I should actually pause here and just to say, from my side, it has been a great pleasure and honor that you have afforded me to present before this committee. Thank you very much, much appreciated. Over to you, Program Director.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lebona. Sorry, thank you very much, Mr. Lebona, for your enlightening talk and for sharing all that information with us regarding your budget and your intentions in your province, all of which are critical to the successful delivery of infrastructure. And as you release funds, so our construction percentage will improve, I'm sure. But thank you again for a very worthwhile presentation. Thank you. Next on our list of speakers is Mr. Hendrick Lowe, the Chief Executive Officer of the Northern Cape Economic Development Agency and currently the acting CEO of the agency. At this point, I would like to request Mr. Lowe to switch on his video and unmute his audio in preparation for his talk. Mr. Lowe has more than 20 years work experience relating to socio-economic development, to investment and project management in the private and public sectors. He holds a master's degree from the University of the Free State and has extensive local and international experience in the field of socio-economic development, which is his passion. Mr. Lowe will be speaking on the topic of Northern Cape, your investment partner. And I'd like to hand over to him at this point. And Mr. Lowe, over to you. And just to remind you that you have 10 minutes. Thank you.
Afternoon, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much for that. I'm going to briefly rush you through just on that side. I think firstly, putting forward to you is the fact that we as the Northern Cape, understand our economy very well. We understand the structural challenges that we have. Because currently our economy can only expand. Pardon, there's a horrible echo on the line. And then coming to that side, as we understand the structural challenges that our economy experienced, because ultimately our economy is extensively primary driven. But if we see the GDP contribution, our biggest contribution remain the tertiary sector. And if I have to refer to that, that is the sector that basically is very highly dependent on the generating capacity of the primary sector. A lot of our primary activity also do not accrue to us as the Northern Cape per se statistically. So our fiscal contribution extend extensively with accrual of our fiscal contribution also then accruing towards the Western Cape, Eastern Cape and KwaZulu-Natal as exports. And I think a fatal flaw for us is the fact that we've got very little provision of our own consumption and then value addition to our own resource profile. So in addressing that, we need to extensively invest in our portfolio. One, to add value to our resource portfolio. Two, to provide in terms of our consumption. And I think a pertinent matter about that is to say that the Northern Cape to a large extent is to a certain extent landlocked, not having our own port, deep sea port scenario. Yes, we do have an international airport, but it's not a frequented airport, but with a huge potential. And then furthermore, that our rail and road capacity is also limited and inhibited. In that may be a blessing of disguise, otherwise we would have just exported far sooner. And we all know the outcome of the resource curse, that any resource has got a lifespan, especially when we come to mining. A lot of people will tell you that renewable energy has got an extended lifespan. It has only got a lifespan up to the point whereby Treasury and Eskom is willing to buy from these energy producers. And we do foresee, though, that this will last beyond the current notion, and well, not notion per se. This is an intent globally to move more green, more environmentally friendly, and that the REIPP program in South Africa will extend. We also foresee that new industries, which is exciting industries, for instance, green hydrogen and ammonia, which is becoming global phenomena, will actually add the extent of renewable energy. In noting these challenges of the structure of our economy, noting that we've got an induced ceiling that has been entrenched due to the structural capacity, noting also that human capital and the flow of capital becomes very important. We note that we have to import, if I can say, investment. We have to enable local human capital development, and these are the important matters for us. And therefore, you will see that our presentation outlay, as you see over there, is then basically focusing to say, firstly, that we are a well-governed state and the province, and we entice ourselves in that we're not a federalistic state, but a unitary state, and that we align ourselves with the presidency. And a huge recommendation currently by the presidency is the CESA, the Infrastructure Commission led by Dr. Ramaggopa. We work very closely with Dr. Ramaggopa and his team and the Presidential Infrastructure and Investment Committee. And therefore, the status of well-governed province is very important for us, because on a daily avenue that we take, we must convince our national partners and then our international trade and investment partners that we are up to speed on these matters. When we go forward onto the next slides, and I think I'm just going to see if we can go forward. The governance model, as just alluded to, I think it's fairly out there. I must also mention that our impetus must be given to the fact that we're also not just governing in the interest of South Africa, but in the interest of SADC. And our enablement of the SADC and the SADC economy and our intertwinedness with also the African Free Trade Agreement, which has recently been reached, and the extent that that has, and within the context of BRICS, to us is very important. When we continue towards the next slide, there's just a rapid factual overview pertaining to population, a 1.3 million population, our actual land mass, and I think our land mass and the extrapolated nature of our spatial dispensation of resources, population, etc., having over 33% of South Africa's land mass, but only just over 2% of the population. Within itself, it poses a tremendous concern pertaining infrastructure, effective service delivery. But to overcome some of these difficulties, we had to position ourselves in terms of the vision, our Vision 2040. On the next slide, you can clearly see that our vision for 2040 is entrenched in the enabling pillar, which is economic transformation, development, and prosperity. A critical element for us will be to nurture our resource base, look after it well, and this is where number 3 comes into play. For that, we need surety of investment destination. A lot of the investors that we deal with on a weekly basis will tell us, if we make an investment of, i.e. the Vedanta Group, a 26 billion rand investment, Aqua Group, which is investing in Jasper, 12 billion rand, we need to have surety of investment for the next 30 years. Socio-economic stability, but also very important, we recently dealt with a branch of the Elon Musk Group as well that that my team and I are busy in the negotiations, which also came to the conclusion to say our investment will be X billion US rand or then USD, And then coming in terms of that, you need to give us infrastructure and socioeconomic stability provision for the next 30 years, because that is our term of return on investment. And before we can put this capital base down in South Africa. So the critical link, and the previous speaker alluded to that, systems is one thing, but people make those, one of the previous speakers, that people make it work. For us, therefore, it's important to create that stable socioeconomic platform, and for that, social equity and human welfare is very important. So, ladies and gentlemen, just snapshot of our strategy, and you will see how I'm funding my argument and being my methodology towards where I actually want to take you, to give you a snapshot. How do we approach this? On the next few slides, and I think we can skip several of them, this is just a statistical profiles, and this gives us some of our economies. And I think very important is our sectoral focuses, our resource profile, our trade profile, and ultimately where I do want to stop is on the slide which will be dealing with the macro projects. And I think that is going to be our very important slides. If we transition, can we please transition to the next slides? And this is just, once again, this is for your own perusal at your leisure, where you can see some of the critical resource profiles which we need to enable with structural capacity. Now, this is the point where I want to stand for a split second before going to the next slide. Ladies and gentlemen, I've built the funnel, I've explained the economy rapidly, I've explained to you our socioeconomic focus. Pertinent for us was you're not going to eat the elephant, and pardon to use this analogy, and in this instance, you're not going to gulp the elephant down with one bite. The elephant, in terms of the Northern Cape, has 33% of South Africa's landmass, is a bit too big. And therefore, we are saying, let's take it bite by bite. And the first bite that we had to take is to say, let us cluster all the economic potential, i.e., where is the population, where is the resources, and the economic activity. That then led to the side where we had clearly identified nodes. Along these nodes, we then linked these nodes to form the Northern Cape Industrial Corridor. Now, this link is not just, it branches out into the rest of South Africa via Northwest into the Platinum Node, into Gauteng, and extend then also into our African counterparts, namely Namibia, Botswana, extending right in with certain interlinkages already into Angola and Zambia. Now, our first point of reference is the Buchu Bay Harbor. Global accessibility to markets is for us very important. You will see that a lot of our resource portfolio, yes, local market consumption in SADC in South Africa is there, but most of our consumption, we literally for most of the year, and we when it's winter time, you will also see the trend in terms of our GDP, you will see the trend in terms of our employment figures, that the fourth quarter of a financial year and the first quarter, which is then extending basically from October right up to February, March of the next calendar year, is normally our peak performance years. And this is when our key exports literally feeds most of Europe's bourgeois. When I say Europe's bourgeois, do not think that I'm making fleeting statements here of political intent. I'm making statements to say that we are producing top quality produce at near organic standard that is only afforded by Euro-paying top consumers. And this is the trend that we've been seeing. Market accessibility then also in terms of our bulk oring. Iron ore, manganese, we do know the nature of this, the Sishen-Saldanha line. We do know the frustration down in Saldanha. We have the very same concerns and congestion currently in Muga, in the port of Muga, down in Port Elizabeth or Nelson Mandela Bay. And these elements has also got intertwined links of transport, the fraternity of trucking and the tremendous horrible footprint that they cause in terms of our infrastructure, environmentally and socially, to mention just a few, is a point of concern. And therefore the divergence then to include Buchu Bay Harbor, but Buchu Bay Harbor not also just dependent on this bulk ore lining. Buchu Bay Harbor speaking for itself. Lately, we are entrenched in negotiations with the European Union, specifically the Port of Rotterdam as an example, We extend furthermore into other BRICS countries, and then with the East, specifically Japan and Korea. Ladies and gentlemen, all major hauling and turbine activity as from 2025 onwards will be fueled by hydrogen. And the prerequisite for this hydrogen is green hydrogen, i.e., we need to use renewable energy sources, because we know that for hydrogen, the two critical ingredients being water and electricity, the electricity source must be then from green source. The Northern Cape currently being mapped, pardon, I oversaw the EU, but also the British side, extensive British interests as well, with offers of offtake as from 2025 of all the green hydrogen and ammonia that we can produce. So Bucco Bay Harbour, ladies and gentlemen, a very important project for us, handling the new, I nearly want to say the new kid on the block in terms of diversification of our economy and the green economy specifically. So port logistics, bulk ore transporting, importing, and then also that for the west coast of Africa is very important for us, complementing what Namibia and Luanda has got, i.e. Lüderitz and Walfish Bay. When we go to the next slides, you will see we extend into the next priority for us, and that is the Namakwa SEZ. Very important for us is the Namakwa SEZ initiated by the Vedanta Zinc International Investment in a zinc smelter. But this is just the initiation. We're talking about 450 million tons of sulfuric acid being produced per annum. And this is rapidly expanded to agriculture, agro-processing, petrochemical, shared services, manufacturing, the pharmaceutical industry, and as mentioned, also a massive application for a green ammonia facility. And one of the latest investments that we're also looking at is a rare earths magnet manufacturing facility that is intertwined with the hydrogen turbine technology. That is also currently a project that we are working on. So Namakwa SEZ to us very important. We are in the designation phases, and as government, we are finding ourselves in the murky water of negotiating a final EIA, bio offset report, and then a water use license and township establishment. Pardon the pun, but we are the victims of our own policies currently. But as mentioned, we are in the final phases, and that designation application being prepared for cabinet, awaiting the EIA in Wooler. When we go forward, then we also deal with the Uppington Industrial Park. This is a very interesting project, also with agro-processing, renewable energy. Ladies and gentlemen, to give you a snapshot, if we're talking green hydrogen production, one of the facilities that we are looking at close to Bucco Bay is a 30,000 hectares. Please, I'm going to repeat this. This is going to be the biggest in the world. It hasn't even been attempted or considered or perceived to be possible. A 30,000 hectares facility that will be put under mirror, i.e. PVCSP, and then wind turbine driven to drive a 5 megawatt per day facility that can drive up a green hydrogen plant. So in our analysis with the presidency, which we work on a daily basis virtually, we are talking and combining it with the Redstone facility of Aqua, the 12 billion investment. We are talking about 17 facilities to be able to be in a position for the next how many years to produce solar panels, solar structures, or assemble them. Let me not say produce them, assemble them, just to be able to supply this demand that will be created. So in doing so, as the Uppington Industrial Park becomes instrumental, but the next very low-hanging fruit, and once again, I do apologize for my language when I say that, is to say that is the aviation maintenance, repairs, and outsourcing. We had a successful program. Some of such regulatory requirements did inhibit the progress on that, and AXA, we've renegotiated with AXA, and they've come to the party full-heartedly. Also, the Defence Force, and then the last critical enabler will be SARS. Ladies and gentlemen, within the next few months, we can start hosting 70 planes, i.e. the likes of British Airways, etc. with COVID, stranded planes, and the landlocked nature of Britain and the EU. We are inundated with requests. Qatar and these countries, Jordania can't handle that pressure anymore. And we are looking at a facility expansion whereby we can maintain, repair, and overhaul planes up to the extent of 340 planes. So a very exciting project. We'll be taking that project to cabinet as well by the month of August for ratification, and then also for it to be gazetted. When we go further then, and this is the one which we've been dealing for quite some time with, is the Katu Industrial Park, right in the heartland of the mining corridor in Khamagara, the so-called Khamagara corridor. And this is now really picking up speed. We directly as government looking at to take up a stake, shareholding in the entity to enable it, noting that the municipality of Khamagara has got certain critical fiscal and bulk infrastructure challenges. So as provincial and national government, we are getting directly involved to enable this project. If we do not have this project, industry cannot co-locate within the mining corridor to supplying these mines, and thus compromising their SLP and mining charter compliance. Ladies and gentlemen, I rushed a bit and you'll see the slides will follow as we continue. But critical for me in all of this is we've entered into a new arena of engineering innovation. One of the interrelated projects, for instance, is the Tsansabane Smart City, Postmansberg, whereby the demand on expansion of settlements, the demand on expansion of industry has become to the side whereby we need to be innovative within the constraints we experience within our rural setting, and also with our unique global scenario setting in terms of temperature extremes, dry weather. Innovative building technologies become important. We cannot handle sanitation like we used to handle it. One of our key concerns is in a lot of these expansions of settlements is how do we handle waterborne sewer? How do we handle these measures? So we will have to have a social change in thinking about it and an engineering change that will have to influence our construction sector. Furthermore, it says, what is the capacity available if we were to be in the next 3-4 years building this harbor? Note has it that we do not have that one engineering and construction capacity. How do we gear ourselves to be prepared for these opportunities? An interesting note of compliment is that Vedanta, which is a global operator and is an Indian-based company, when they initiated the Gamsberg mine, they experienced some severe technical challenges. And they first went abroad to Europe and back to India, China, and Brazil. And ultimately, a company in Van der Bijl was able to address the serious technical concern. And to hear the South African and the Indian overall anchor company, the mother company holder saying to you, CEO saying to you, you know, we went all over the world and we found the solution in South Africa through an engineering firm in Van der Bijl, is really the moments where you get gooseflesh of pride to say, we've got the competency, we've got the potential. Ladies and gentlemen, so presenting to you today is just to say that our Vision 2040 is vibrant, it's alive, it's very diversified, it is a reality. And to the fraternity, I want to say, let us up our game, let us up our partnerships, and let us enable us to be able to participate. The pity is, and I've been listening to some of the pre-speeches to mine, is it all boils down to supply chain management principles. And critical for us is, do we have the price competitive, competence competitive companies in South Africa? And that is the challenge that I want to pose to each of you today participating in this webinar. I thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for this opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lowe, for a very informative talk, for giving us your views and your planning and very positive outlook for your province, for economic and hopefully your infrastructure development in the province, and also highlighting that the challenge is the supply chain management principles. Thank you for enabling us to meet our quest to protect lives and livelihoods. And I hope our sector can be part of your exciting plan going forward. So thank you very much, Mr. Lowe. We now move on to our fifth speaker, who is Mr. Sabelo Mkhize, a civil engineering technician who holds the post of Compliance Manager, Water and Sanitation at the Salt Plaatje municipality. At this point, I'd like to request Mr. Mkhize to switch on his video and unmute his audio. Mr. Mkhize is well qualified to address us on his topic of municipal infrastructure and services. And I would now like to call on Mr. Mkhize to address us. So Mr. Mkhize, it's over to you. And just to remind you that you have 10 minutes for your talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Program Director, President of CESA, CESA CEO, fellow professionals that are in attendance today and presenting, my local government colleagues, good afternoon. I will be presenting basically on a case of Salt Plaatje municipality. On municipal infrastructure and services. And I'm hoping that my presentation will leave some lessons to colleagues. Just a brief background. The previous speaker indicated that Northern Cape has about 1.3 million population, and 300,000 of that is within Salt Plaatje municipality, with about 80,000 households, which basically leads to about 4 persons per household. It just indicates the magnitude of pressure on services for the municipality, and a need for us to up our game, or to be abreast with the demand amidst the challenges that we are facing. Colleagues, my presentation will basically be as outlined, and I'll try to be brief because I've got 10 minutes and I've got quite a few slides, but on some of them I'll just quickly run through. Salt Plaatje municipality is both WSA and WSP, which means we've got a full mandate in terms of water services, provision, and management, administration, and compliance. So including local regulation. Also, we are responsible for...
Sorry, Mr. Mkhize. Can you share your slides, please?
Oh, okay. I thought you can see them.
Sorry, we can't. Yes.
Oh, okay. Let me just quickly go back one step, and see if you can you see them now. Not yet.
Not yet. Oh, there we go.
Okay.
Okay. If you can just put it in slide view, please. Yeah. Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. I was viewing it like this from my side so that you couldn't see. Yes, so this is the outline of my presentation. And I'm not going to go through it. And I just indicated that the municipality is both a water service authority and water service provider, which means we've got full mandate in terms of water services, provision, as well as regulation. We are also a road authority, so we're managing and regulating our roads within the municipal area, except obviously the provincial and national roads that transgress transects our city. We are also an electrical service provider as well, authorized by NERSA. So basically, we're providing full services within our area of jurisdiction as a municipality. The purpose of my presentation basically will be just to give a brief infrastructure situation within the municipality, challenges, that we're facing as a municipality, which I strongly believe is not unique to Salt Lake municipality, to deal with the demand, and also our interventions to deal with the demand. And how do we then prioritize our interventions? I'm from the Directorate Infrastructure and Services, and it comprises of the following divisions or sub-directorates: water and sanitation, where I'm coming from. We've got electrical and mechanical engineering, including fleet management, roads and stormwater, and housing development. Just a brief background on our infrastructure approach. In 2008, the municipality put a moratorium on development due to inadequate bulk infrastructure, that cutting across water, sanitation, and electricity mainly. And because the demand was so high that we just couldn't, we have to focus on bringing up our infrastructure first before we can continue with development. And that also obviously had a negative and knock-on effect on development in the area and in our economy as well. Then we commissioned a feasibility study in 2009 in order to address the issues of assets and quality infrastructure need, and then bulk infrastructure requirements, development of a funding model for Salt Lake, so that we should be able to fund the demands that are there for infrastructure. It was completed and approved by council, and then subsequently the moratorium was lifted. On implementation of the feasibility study, about 1.2 billion was required, and that came out of the study. And due to financial constraints, we had to prioritize our implementation, and we started with basically 12 main projects on infrastructure to unlock capacity. Then we had to look for funding because we don't have enough money to cater for the 1.2 billion required. So we had a loan from a DBSA of about 230 million. MIG at the time, which now has changed to IUDG, 60 million. Francis Bart Municipality contributed 5 million. From Department of Water and Sanitation, Regional Bulk Infrastructure Grant contributed about 205 million. Transnet contributed about 100 million. And the entire project was about 600 million, which was half of what was required for the study. And we made inroads in that regard. Projects that were then prioritized for implementation, the first 12 high priorities was upgrading of Home Valley Wastewater Treatment Works, which is the main wastewater treatment facility in Salt Lake or in Kimberley. That was reaching capacity at the time. So it was upgraded from 3 megaliters per day to 48, and we spent about 360 million. The upgrading of Beaconsfield, which is a second treatment works in Kimberley, on the eastern side of town, where we spent about 15 million. We upgraded Ritchie wastewater treatment works from oxidation pond system. And then we installed isolation valves at Newton Reservoir so that we'd be able to manage water situation, outlets, control in terms of emergencies and so forth, where we spent about 22 million. We implemented zone metering project so that we should be able to isolate different demand or supply zones within the city. We identified about 16 zones. We managed to implement 8 zones or complete 8 zones up to so far. And we spent about 15 million onto that. Then there was a construction of 80 mega MVA transformers, megawatt transformers from the ESCOM supply side. And we also then increased our notified demand from 112 MVA to 200 MVA. There was a construction of 2 times 20 MVA transformers at Midland, installation of new 2 times 30 MVA transformers at Hull Street, construction of 30 MVA transformer in Southridge, upgrading of substations at Ashburnham to 2 times 20 MVA, upgrading of Riverton Pump Station, which is our main water transfer station from Riverton to Kimberley, from the Vaal River side to Kimberley. Then upgrading of outfall sewer from Hoka Pump Station to Homevale, which is again our main transfer station that takes all the drainage of sewage from Khalishiwe and the surrounding areas across the watershed to Homevale, where we spend about 36 million. Because of these interventions, just for these 12 projects, we managed to unlock development. The university came to the city. We have enough bulk to cater for it, at least the initial stages of the university. Construction of the new mental hospital. We could provide now for bulk for both electrical and water supply. Harib Medical Clinic was also constructed in the Hillcrest area. Construction of Landmed Hospital, and this is state of the art hospitals in the province. The Rato Park housing development, about 4,000 units are coming up. It's a big development, and it's got a lot of pressure in terms of bulk infrastructure demands. And at least we managed to kickstart that project, which is still ongoing. And there's other few developments that are coming up: the Snake Park, the Thabo Park, Ivory Park township developments that are also can now be triggered and approved, because at least we've got bulk infrastructure to deal with that for the current demand. And then there's a new pump station as well completed in Riverton, which when it's fully operational or a fully utilized will pump about 2,000 liters per second. At the moment, we're only using 2, and we're pumping about 1.3, 1.4, 1,200, 1,400 liters per second from that pump station. However, this hasn't really eradicated all the challenges that we have in terms of infrastructure. We still have some challenges, and the major challenge is the aged and dilapidated infrastructure for all the services: water, sanitation, electricity, and roads. Those who are driving around Kimberley will know the state of our roads, and also those who are staying in Kimberley specifically or within Sonpla, you know that we still struggle to keep a 24-hour water supply for especially during peak demand. And those are the challenges that we have here. Our sewer system, it's old, and then it's still giving us problems in terms of collapse of bulk sewers and sewer blockages. The second challenge is vandalism and theft, especially on the electricity and metal components of our infrastructure. It's just something that is difficult to deal with, but it's putting us backwards. And inadequate bulk water distribution, especially and storage, especially from Riverton, our main water supply area. The bulk line, we've got the 900 and the 600, and they are old, approaching 100 years in age now, and they are giving up. So that's a challenge. And also they are just adequate for the current demand, not for the future demand. Then inadequate sewer pump stations capacity because of growth. We have to look at that. With broken and obsolete metering of water and electricity, we have to replace our water meters and electricity meters to be able to also to enhance our revenue collection. And obviously, there is increasing demand on services just due to normal growth, especially with the university now being in town. There's influx of people, students, and other people that are actually a knock-off effect of the development of the university in our city. And all that is bringing posing increase of demand of the services. And then there's misuse of infrastructure, and that is basically from our communities. When you unblock these sewers, you get all sorts of things, from tires and bricks, and it's constraining the capacity of our infrastructure, unfortunately. And then the one that is not encapsulated by mistake, but inadequate of capital and O&M funding. Funding is just always a problem, and we are not getting there. As much as you like to do 1, 2, 3, but just because of funding constraints, then we're still limited. My slides are stuck. I'm trying to move them. Oh, there you go. This is just an example of how this is one of the old pumps installed in 1949. It's still operating, but it's giving up. This is cable theft. This was considered from the guys that stole cables. It's just a portion of it, but we have this almost on daily basis. And this is the condition of our road infrastructure. And this, you can see that is, besides just maintenance, but it's overload, because trucks from the mines and across from coming from all over the country, they pass through here. We've got national roads, N8, N12, R31, R64 going through town, and all those heavy duty vehicles drive through the streets, which basically are not designed for heavy duty. Then as an intervention to all these challenges, we've identified key strategic projects that will improve access to services in our city. Starting with water and sanitation services, maybe just a background. I spoke about our bulk water coming from the Fall River, that is River water purification in the capacity of 162 megaliters per day. And our demand is just around 100. At peak time, at peak season, it also increases to 110, 120. Then there's a capacity constraint. And then from the plan, then we've got 2 lines, the 900 and the 600, that goes up to this point B, which is Midlands, and they split there to 2 times 600 in that direction, and then 965 a diameter in this direction. We do have some direct takeoffs, but eventually then they get to our bulk storage at Newton Reservoir, which has got 4 reservoirs to a capacity of 261 megaliters per day. Capacity of bulk infrastructure. Basically, on the wastewater side, we've got 48 megaliters of home build, as I indicated earlier on. That was upgrade from 83. Beaconsfield, it's 8, and then reach it 2. And then we just completed the Hoka transfer rising main, because there's about 50 megaliters that is transferred from that side of town. Challenges specifically to water and sanitation, high level of water losses due to infrastructure condition, but the 60% is basically non-revenue water. The physical water losses is about 50% around there, but non-revenue water is about 60%. We've got issues with vandalism, as I indicated earlier, and other challenges of aging infrastructure as well. environmental pollution due to spillages, the old bulk pipeline from Riverton that I indicated earlier, and then the storage capacity that is not adequate. For the 262 megaliter capacity is not adequate for 48 hours during peak time, because the peak time is about 120 plus minus, and yeah, we just don't have enough storage capacity there. And then faulty leaking meters and so forth, they also contribute to losses. Then projects that are planned and that are currently implemented to address these challenges. The Hokasua Project I just mentioned earlier, the new rising main from Hoka Pump Station to Homeville, it's at 99% complete. The Rato Park Link Park Service to provide for the development in Hoka, in the Rato Park, I mean, that the housing development. It's almost completed. Homeville, Outfall Sewer, the Rato Park Electrical and Mechanical Project. The planned projects, it's the 1.2 meter diameter pipeline from Riverton to Kimberley, Riverton Reclamation Dam to reduce water losses.
Sorry, Mr. Mkhize, can you start wrapping up, please? We're a little constrained for time. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. I'll run through. And the projects or lines indicated in bold are all planned projects still to be implemented, so that we can alleviate the challenges that we have in terms of bulk. This is just a list of short-term projects that need to be implemented. And that is now up to 12 months in terms of their duration, so that we can alleviate our bulk infrastructure challenges. And this is just also some of those activities. The total required is about 98 million for the short-term projects. Medium to long-term, these are the projects that we have to attend to, and we need about 580 million to attend to that. These are just pictures of the current projects, activities, the condition of the 965, the bulk line from Riverton. This is the new pump station with new transformers at Riverton. The electrical infrastructure, I won't go through the responsibilities, but as I said, we are a full authority to supply electricity in the city. And this is what we have in terms of our responsibilities. The challenges are the same as water is basically across the board, and electricity loss is about 25%. Interventions, again, the projects lines that are in bold is planned projects. Those in normal font is implemented projects. We are also looking at renewable energy, so that we can reduce dependence on Eskom grid. And these are the projects for electrical, and the one in red is actually in Riverton, so it's both for water and electrical department. That is why it's highlighted differently. We need about 93 million to address this. On the road infrastructure, as I said, we are the road authority, so we have to make sure that we provide safe and forgiving road for road users. This is just our responsibilities as a municipality, which is normal to a municipality as a road authority within its own area of jurisdiction. This is our infrastructure, flexible road pavement, 520 kilometers, block pave 57, gravel 204. And totally 781 kilometers of road network. Same challenges that we have with other as other units, but I think here also the abuse of the stormwater system is also prevalent. People dumping anything in those in our infrastructure. Eventually, then we've got challenges with operations of those systems. It's just the impact of the bad condition of the road, damages to properties, especially the vehicles and so forth, this misuse of stormwater system. And this is things that we have to deal with on a daily basis. These are the projects that we have to implement to alleviate the challenges that we have. And we need about 500 million for roads in this regard. And this talks to a lot of financial resource that is required. With maintenance, one can obviously improve life of the equipment, and you just prolong the asset life, extend it when there's proper maintenance, which again, if we don't have enough funds to do that, then it also falls behind a little bit. I'm not going to go through this, but just a summary of the projects that I've indicated on top, just summarized here. But in total, then we need about 3.4 billion to address our infrastructure challenges, of which we don't have. And the funding model that we're looking at is loans, mainly from DBSA, the grant funding, from all the government grant funds, grant sources. And they're also looking at BOT, build, operate, and transfer arrangement. And then very limitedly from our CRR, because CRR is more dependent on revenue collection. Just in conclusion, Chair, we are facing huge challenges with regards to infrastructure. I think that's the main thing. And the resources required, we need about 4 billion in the next 10 years, so that we can move from this condition, which is the old infrastructure, into condition like this, which will be a new infrastructure in the municipality with a better service delivery. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Mr. Mkhize. I'm sorry I had to rush you. From the slides, it looks like you've put a lot of effort into your presentation, and it speaks directly to our members, because you can see that engineering services, consulting engineering services, plays a large part in meeting your challenges and in providing essential engineering services to your constituents. So thank you very much, and apologies for rushing you.
You're welcome, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Mkhize. Then our final speaker this afternoon is Engineer Chris Campbell, the Chief Executive Officer at CESA, who will be addressing us on behalf of the CESA President, who apologizes he's unfortunately unable to join us today. Engineer Campbell is a professional civil engineer and holds a BSc Civil Engineering degree from a university in the United States of America. His engineering institutional involvement notably includes having been the president of the Engineering Council of South Africa, that we know as EXA, and currently he is the chairperson of the FIDIC Directors and Secretaries Advisory Council, which is an international honor and a committee. Engineer Campbell will be speaking on the presidential message for 2021, entitled Rebuilding with Purpose and the Importance of Quality, Integrity and Accountability in South Africa's Road to Recovery. At this point, I would like to call on Engineer Campbell to address us. So it's over to you, Engineer Campbell.
Thank you, Wally, for that introduction. And honored guests and speakers, it's indeed an honor and a privilege to be able to share with you our branch webinar presidential address, which would have been presented by our president, Sugian Pillay. Unfortunately, he had to attend another more pressing matter. So this is the reason why I will be doing the presentation on his behalf. I think many of you in the Northern Cape branch may be online may be aware that this is not unusual. I've been there to the Northern Cape in person when we used to do these in person. And yeah, I think that let's proceed. We are short of time, and I'm going to try and be as succinct and to the point as possible. So starting off, let me just share with you that, 2020, of course, without stating the obvious, was a completely different year to any of the other years that we have ever known. And of course, along with that, and I must say that I don't believe it was necessarily premised only on COVID-19, but already before then, there was a recognition of a need for an economic reconstruction and recovery plan. The COVID-19 pandemic just made it a whole lot more urgent to implement and start working on. So in commencing how we see Consulting Engineers South Africa and our members making this difference, we have the view that we need to look at how do we rebuild with purpose. You can't just rebuild and then hope that things will just work. You gotta have a plan and a purpose, and so amongst the initiatives that we looked at how do we strengthen the relationships between government and private sector. How do we get more involved? I think many of you might have attended or heard of this Sustainable Infrastructure Development Symposium. That was, with all due respect, a talk shop. The work has started. Infrastructure South Africa is in place, and we are looking to how might we be able to get involved more. I'm not going to repeat. There have been many challenges over the years, and many of which haven't quite changed yet. One of the key challenges, and I think it has become a strong focus of government, is that of building a capable state. It was indeed a concern that was reiterated in the Auditor General's report. And as we are probably all aware, it is very boldly stated as an absolute necessity in our National Development Plan. We do, of course, have a couple of social ills that plague us. Much as we try to move 3 steps forward, we find that there are elements who pull us a couple more steps backwards. And I want to clarify there that, though there's been lots of talk about this construction mafia, I think there's a firm belief that it is not of necessity communities who stand to benefit from the infrastructure that's going to be developed. These are really just maybe gangsters, people who don't really have a vested interest in those communities, who then create the kind of situations that you have, which further delays progress in delivering infrastructure to the various communities. We've heard more about the improvement in the engineering, or the energy landscape. More windows being opened for the independent power producers. I am also now painfully aware that, and I am also not sure that we need an expensive offshore solution such as car power ships to be providing these, because if one looks at the objections raised against nuclear, then I think the objections against this car power ship would be equally as strong for the same reasons. And simply because it puts our country in debt for many, many more years to come, more than some of us may still be around for. And then I think what's important recognition that we have is there is a need for us to, and I say this with caution, for companies to be sustainable, there has to be profit, but we have to always look at, through the spirit of Ubuntu, how do we balance that? We have circumstances of an ailing economy, and with over 32%, in fact 32.6% of the current figures, that is indeed a major challenge. And maybe to answer the question that was raised, or the challenge raised by one of our earlier speakers about construction's contribution to the GDP in the Northern Cape. Unfortunately, you know, if I look at the Statistician General Q1 report for this year, the largest decrease in employment was in construction, in the amount of about 87,000 jobs lost. Now, that's a factor of the limited investment that's being put into infrastructure development, both in the public and the private sector. So indeed, that is something that's going to have to change. That was 2020. So in 2021, as part of our continued rebuilding with purpose, indeed, CESA sees itself as an apolitical organization, but with democracy, our new democracy, very close to where we want to be, and we will at all times support those any initiatives that consider preserving and deepening our democracy. We've also heard recently more about the private sector's involvement in the COVID-19 vaccine rollout, and we are encouraged. It didn't start off with the kind of speed that we'd hoped for, but I do believe that in the next few months, it is going to gain traction. The plan between government and the private sector through B4SA is to have that rollout completed before the end of the year. Now, even in the rollout of the vaccine, we believe that our industry have the skills to assist. It's project management, it's logistics. How might our consulting engineering companies be able to add some of the value to the thinking in this rollout? Setting up a temporary vaccination sites. So, you know, those are some of the ideas. We have to, unfortunately, also exercise patience, because we understand that many of the municipalities and public sector entities had budgets diverted to try to deal with the impacts of the COVID-19 effects, both through providing additional medical facilities and the like. What we do need to do is we need to look at a legacy of infrastructure with a long-term lens. If we're going to fix hospitals, let's not fix them now only to deal with COVID-19. Let's make sure that they actually work. The infrastructure that should be there, that should be in place, that should be functional, should be able to deal with and cope with any black swan event as we have had to in the past year. We can't simply be looking at a caravan or a tent type of infrastructure. And then we all realize it, and I said so early on, the investment and the partnership has to be between the state and society, all working together. There's much spoken about in respect of what is known as the social compact. And now more than ever, there's a need for that social compact between government, business, society, and labor, if we're going to get ourselves off this economic precipice that we find ourselves. So along with the rebuilding with purpose, and in 2021, what do we think are the kinds of aspects that need to be strengthened? Firstly, greater community involvement. In our consulting engineering environment, we should be looking at involving communities at design stage, so that we no longer develop pathways and bridges where communities walk next to them and not on them or over them. I know that human behavior is a difficult thing to change, but maybe what we should consider is exactly that, the human behavior, instead of what we assume to be the best solution, the best fit. And then in our construction, how can we, in certain circumstances, create more jobs without protracting the delivery process? In our spatial planning, you know, we need to give that huge rethink. Workplaces shouldn't be so far from home places, the commute, and simply because we just do not have what we should have as a reliable, affordable, and safe public transport system. So as far as spatial planning goes, we might have to think more strongly about bringing home closer to the workplace for many, many more of our people. In preserving what we have, certainly the focus on maintenance is crucial. We don't have the money to build everything new. And best we look at what we have and see how best we can fix, extend the lifespan thereof, because we just would not be able to replace all of the infrastructure if we do not have our maintenance interventions in time. This, of course, requires a partnership from all spheres of government, and I am encouraged by some of the initiatives that look at the 3 tiers of government working together in ensuring that there's synergy, as opposed to, you know, assuming that, well, you know, it's your problem and it's not mine. It's our problem. The next initiative, which I am happy to share with you, has already started. In fact, its first kickoff meeting is tomorrow with the task team from the Minister of the Public Service Administration. There is a seriousness now about professionalizing the public sector. And CESA, I'm happy to share with you, is part of that task team. And I think that we have huge amounts of value that we could add to that. In conjunction with that, some of what we need to be doing is looking at how can we increase the level of mentoring and mentorship. You know, mentoring shouldn't be someone doing someone else a favor, or you have to, in a company, you know, be selective. I've been in this profession and this industry for well over 30 years. And I recall a time when the elders in the company would take you under their wing. And it wasn't about them being a different shade or talking a different language. It was normal behavior, and we must start implementing that kind of culture in all of our working environments. You know, knowledge that goes off with you when you depart from this life is of no use to anyone. So if you want to leave a legacy, then leave that with our youth that would like to grow and develop as well. And then as part of our Rebuilding 2021, a strong focus that we have on transformation, diversity, and inclusivity in our industry. What else do we need to do? Very briefly. Speed up infrastructure development. I think we wish. If we were in control, maybe yes. But I think the partnership model is what's going to help. Often there may be capacity constraints, and in our partnership, we might very well be able to address those capacity constraints in getting this a ball rolling. And then very importantly is there must be on all fronts within our companies, private sector, is not innocent of this, and likewise in public sector, there must be zero tolerance of corruption on the side of either party. Again, here I can happily share with you that CESA is also part of the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure Build Anti-Corruption Forum, which was recently launched. And this is a partnership between DPWI through Infrastructure South Africa, the SIU, the Hawks, and a couple of the industry associations that you may know of. So certainly there's a seriousness for us to get rid of this scourge. As far as our project delivery is concerned, we should at all times, whether it be in your person, as an industry, and in society, consider the quality of the work we do, with what integrity we do it, and the accountability to which we should be held when we indeed act as those professionals. And then lastly, but not least on this slide, the transparency that we hope to come from the procurement processes and the draft bill. We do look forward to that. We know that the bill is still in its development stages and most likely may be promulgated early sometime next year. But what do we also need to do is getting back to where we were, and you take 2 steps backwards to get that giant leap forward. We need to focus on recovery. We know about the SIPs, that was the Economic Recovery Plan, and the current flavor of these strategic infrastructure projects. Indeed, it is no big secret that infrastructure development is a catalyst for job creation and facilitating the trade and exchanges required for growing our economy. And we do plan to have our infrastructure in Durban later this year. And then just so that we are more aware of it, there is collaborative organizations of which CESA is a part. There are at least 30 other industry associations in construction who are looking at how do we, as an industry, support government and lobby government on matters that affect the construction sector. So in conclusion, certainly we have focused on, and we need to do more of that, on sustainable solutions, not just some quick fix patch and solution when actually, I think the best analogy is if there are at least 100 potholes in 200 meters of road, or let's say even in 500 meters, is it correct to just be patching those potholes? Or are you wasting your time? Should you not just redo that whole section? So it's looking at sustainable solutions and what are the causes. Then, of course, we all, undeniably, we need to look at and see an improved use of the taxpayers' money. Our undying support for an appropriately capacitated state, and one where we develop safe and reliable infrastructure which form the strong foundation for the economic growth that we need. And in the words of the Minister of the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure, Patricia de Lille, I quote, "We need to start implementing. The patience of our people is running out." And with that, I would like to thank you and just close off by saying that Consulting Engineers is indeed your partner in enabling consulting engineering excellence. Thank you very much, Wally, and everyone for listening.
Thank you very much, Engineer Campbell, for an eloquent and challenging message to the consulting engineering industry and our members. Thank you. I really enjoyed your presentation. At this point in the program, it's the question and answers. I see we've just quickly grown by 2 questions. There was only one. And I think the first question, because it asks, what is CESA doing to assist junior civil engineers who are unemployed and as a result will be delayed in obtaining professional registration? During this time, it is very difficult to get employment. Some of us are willing to work for a stipend just to get our careers back on track. As I was saying, I think I'd like to ask our CEO, Engineer Campbell, to answer that one because the question is pointed to CESA. Engineer Campbell.
Thank you, Wally. You know, I think having this engineer thing title as a prefix, it's not something we're used to as South Africans. It's very widely used on the rest of the continent. But to answer the question from Selina, you know, Selina, we fully understand and appreciate the frustration, the challenges that you may be feeling. And first thing I want to invite you to do is visit the CESA website. And we do have a portal where you can post your CV. Often we are approached by public sector, all departments, and we send them a full list of all of the people that are in the situation that you find yourselves. It's indeed, it's the biggest irony that we have in the country, that we have the shortage of engineering practitioners in the public service, but we have so many unemployed engineers. I do understand that it's an issue of linking the skills because that's what the professionalization is all about. But as a start, I would encourage you to post your CV. You may send it to Godfrey directly for us to look at, can we assist? Because often when the list of names is very long, it's easy for people to be missed. It's the plight of many, many young people. And in fact, the other thing I want to encourage you to do is our Young Professionals Forum are having a series of career development webinars. And please feel free to join those as well. I think there's some good ideas there. And certainly if there's something that we could do directly, we would assist. But we do know that at the moment there's a disjoint between the number of projects, companies having had to downsize, and the conundrum of having unemployed engineers, young engineers that we need to be developing into the practitioners of the future. Not a definitive answer, but certainly let's see how we can assist you. We have been trying for the over 700 people on our current database. Thank you, Wally.
Thank you, Christopher. We're on the questions, but the two other questions shown, of the three we have, two are from the same person and also relate to the issue of employment and registration and so forth. So we will just deal with that administratively because we have overrun our time by 10 minutes already. So thank you for staying with us. Just that if there are any questions that the delegates would like to ask, you can still ask them, send them to us, and we will coordinate the answers and reply. So you could just use my address, which is wally@cesa.co.za, and I will make sure that you get an answer. Then just moving on to say that we've reached the end of the CESA presidential webinar, and I'd like to thank all the speakers very much for availing of their time and for sharing their knowledge and thoughts with us. And of course, A big thank you to the members, to you, and any guests for supporting CESA and attending our webinar. Long ago was with CESA. In closing, I would like to kindly request members to complete the questionnaire or the survey that's going to appear on your screens after you've left the meeting. This is quite important, so please pay attention. There's 2 reasons why you need to complete this. The first is to rate your satisfaction or otherwise with the webinar so that we can improve on our webinars. And secondly, your response will serve as verification that you have attended the webinar, and it will enable you to claim CPD points for attending this webinar. And we are already late, so I won't delay any longer. Thank you very much and goodbye. The meeting has ended. Thank you.